we're in the month of December. December is a very important month when it comes to football, right? When I watch the NFL Red Zone, Scott Hansen always refers to the fourth quarter as like the witching hour, right? Where wins turn to losses and losses turn to wins. Right now, the Eagles are sitting here at 11-1. From 2018 all the way to 2021, of course, that 2020 season where we missed the playoffs, that's an outlier. Every single time, the Eagles have come into the month of November with a really bad record. I think one year we were 3-5. Last year we were 3-6, or maybe 4-6. Not good. But then the month of December is when the Eagles started to rattle off all their wins, have consecutive wins, 3 consecutive wins, 4 consecutive wins. And that is what put them into the playoffs. So this is kind of like uncharted territory from recent years, where we were like, we need to win 4 straight games in order to even sniff the playoffs. Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are at 11-1. They currently have the best record in the NFL. I don't know if they're the best team in the NFL. Obviously, that changes week to week. But they have the best record. And the Vikings are 10-2. The Cowboys, who are playing right now, are 8-3. Giants are 7-4-1. Commanders are 7-5-1. The 49ers they won today too. They're not 8-4. So there are a lot of teams chomping at the bit, trying to get to that number 1 seed. And they're hoping that the Philadelphia Eagles lose. The Eagles control their own destiny. There are 5 more games left in this season. Okay? Realistically, in order to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which you want home field advantage throughout the playoffs. I know that once you get to the playoffs, that stuff doesn't really matter, but you want to play your games at home, especially if you have some sort of home field advantage. You want to be playing games in front of your home fans throughout the playoffs. Realistically, with 5 games left. Yeah, 5 games left. The Eagles probably need to win 4 of them. 4 of them. Because you can't hope, and a lot of them are division games. It's 2 Giants, 1 Cowboys. One's Chicago and one's New Orleans. You need to win the division ones, specifically. Maybe you drop one of those division ones, but you can't hope that the Minnesota Vikings are going to lose, because the Minnesota Vikings do not have a strong division. They don't. They've got some teams that are underperforming, specifically. You can't be hoping that these teams lose, because that might not even happen. The Giants don't play the Cowboys again. The Commanders do. So you have to control your own destiny. You have to look at it as, we need to essentially win out. There are a lot of teams, again, nipping at our heels, hoping that the Eagles lose, but you need to have that standard of, we got to take this game after game after game. I would personally, I would treat every game like a playoff game. And if you lose one of those games, well, then it's going to get tougher and tougher for you. You're not going to be as comfortable at the end. But you also don't want to be comfortable. That's the whole thing. A lot of teams, they are the number 1 seed, and they kind of get too comfortable. They kind of get comfortable with the feeling that, we're the top dogs, and all the rest of you guys are, you're sitting down there in your well twiddling your thumbs. But those other teams, they're not twiddling their thumbs. They're looking at film week after week, trying to find ways to beat the Eagles. They're trying to look at the Eagles' weaknesses, look at the Eagles' weak spots. They're watching film. They're labbing. They're practicing. They're coming up with strategy. The Eagles need to be ahead of the game. They need to be, thinking ahead of all of these teams. They cannot get too comfortable. Even if they are comfortable, they can't get too comfortable, because one of these teams could kind of step in and kind of just own the Eagles. Eagles might lose 2 games. Vikings don't lose 2 games. Cowboys don't lose 2 games. You got to win these games. And, the first 8 weeks of the season, the Eagles had a relatively easy schedule. Well, I mean, it's not. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. They had a pretty easy schedule. Now, we're getting into the teeth of the schedule. We're getting into the sharks of the schedule, right? You're Dallas, you're New York. We play these teams. We play 3 of these games against pretty good to really good teams. And even the teams that are not so good, man, they still want to beat the Eagles. They still want to ruin seasons. That's what they do. They're not just going to sit down. They're not just going to sit down and be like, "Oh, we're just going to take it." No, they're not going to do that. So the Eagles need to continue to keep their eyes on the prize. They need to win their games. They need to treat every game like it's their last. They got to go out there and put everything out on the field. Because if they don't and they get too comfortable, then these other teams are going to absolutely massacre the Eagles, and they're absolutely going to win these games. I've seen it. I've seen teams who were the number 1 seed and then they just lost everything. Now I know that, again, being the number 1 seed, I mean, the last 2 Super Bowl champions weren't the number 1 seed. The last 2 champions, one of them was the 3 seed and one of them was like the 6th or 5th seed. That stuff doesn't matter as much when it comes to the game, right? But they always say that you want to have the highest seed that you can, because, again, the highest seed plays the lowest seed. That's how that works. Sometimes you want rest, sometimes you don't want rest. I don't really know the psychology about that. We'll talk about that once it comes closer to the playoffs. But I'll leave you with one more thing. The Eagles haven't clinched the playoffs yet. I think the Eagles needed a few things to happen today, and they didn't happen. It's something to do with the 49ers and the Seahawks and the Giants beating the Commanders, which didn't happen. I don't know if a tie makes things more difficult or less difficult. But like I always say, a tie is better than a loss. Part of me really does like the fact that we haven't clinched the division yet. Part of me really likes the fact that the Eagles need to work that much harder to clinch the division. I don't like to clinch divisions. I don't like to clinch the playoffs by losing. I want to clinch it by winning.